he did also play.
Danny Etling all over again.
No, Evan, no. I want you to take that back right now. Don't insult. That's so insulting to Malik Cunningham. He is another.
Can we just have
Danny
a team?
Etling is closer to me athletically than he is to Malik Cunningham.
Can we just have a team where Malik Cunningham is not going to make or break the season? That's what I think I said after that. I think that's where I was headed.
You said, why does Malik Cunningham have to be a thing?
Right. Why does it have to matter?
Okay, but there's a difference between.
Do you think the Eagles, who are on the TV behind me, so that's why I just thought of it. Did you think the Eagles are going into training camp thinking about the UDFA quarterback that they might switch to wide receiver, who might switch to running back? And they're going in, they're saying, this guy could be it. This could be the X factor that puts us over the Chiefs next year.
First of all,
no, because they have
Eagles,
A.J. Brown, and they have Devontae Smith, and they have Jalen Hurts playing quarterback. So they have first world problems. We're better than this.
First of all,
we're better than this.
First of all,
Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Catch-22.
The Eagles quarterback that they might switch to whatever is a quarterback who might switch to tight end. He was undrafted, not this year, but he was undrafted. His name is Tyree Jackson, who at one point was one of your favorite players.
I did like Tyree Jackson.
So you would talk about Tyree Jackson.
He was buff Cam Newton. You know, like he was that level.
There's somewhere out there in the internet. I don't have the picture anymore. Somewhere on Twitter, something is a picture of Tyree, like 6'9" Tyree Jackson standing next to 5'7" Evan Lazar.
Yeah, it's kind of like the people that have seen like the Trent Brown, Mike Reese photo. It's similar to that.
Yeah, but it's better because you don't have the step stool. The other thing is, I don't think anybody's sitting here saying Malik Cunningham's going to make or break the season, but he's a fun story.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
No, he's
I'm
not.
sorry, it is. It is. He's a fun story. He's a very
not.
athletic guy. Totally unknown how they're going to use him. It's a little interesting.
It's not.
Evan, you know this as well as anybody.
Do you know what's interesting, Alex?
It's a long spring. It's a long training camp. You can't just talk about the top 10 players on the roster. You got to find those other stories.
Okay, but do you know what's interesting?
What?
Keyshawn Butte is interesting. Demario Douglas is interesting.
Evan, there's what?
Malik Cunningham is not interesting.
30 days of training camp. We're going to get another 6 spring practices, 3 preseason games. The indoor practice is
going to be... We'll get the schedule tonight.
There's going to be...
Well, we know.
Well, no, this is the schedule leading up to that. There's going to be plenty of time. We got a lot of time to talk about a lot of players. Nobody's saying we can't talk about those guys,
and we're going to talk about a lot of players today. We're going to preview kind of the reset, I think is a better word. Reset the offensive side of the ball, play a little better, worse, or same. This is an idea that I think Mike Reese did it first, so we're kind of taking it from Mike, but it was a good idea. We're going to do
Mike's the GOAT.
We're going to do offense today, and then next week we'll do defense because Alex and I can get long-winded, and if we try to do both sides of the ball, we'd be here for 3 hours. So that's the goal, is to do offense this week, defense next week. We will touch a little bit on some schedule stuff. We're in a little bit of a gray area here, Alex, that we can talk about the things that have already been announced. We can talk about some rumors, but it's a little bit of a touchy subject. And
well, look, the reality is, and we truly appreciate everybody who watches the pod live or listens to it live, and we thank you. But there's a lot of people who, maybe will listen to it tonight or tomorrow, and at that point we'll know the schedule. So
right. It's not exactly, it doesn't have a very good shelf life to talk about schedule rumors.
As long as the show is just one day a week, we kind of want to make it as evergreen as possible, and discussing schedule possibilities when the schedule will come out tonight.
6 hours.
Kills is it still 6 hours?
So a couple of things about the schedule. First of all, just for me personally, not being you have the whole thread. It's not this team. It's not that.
I call it schedule Sudoku.
The fact that I don't need to worry about that anymore, because we just don't do that around here, is actually refreshing. I'm actually glad that I'm not sitting here refreshing my phone every 30 seconds saying, what game did we get leaked this time? The second thing is and I really genuinely want to put this out there for 2 reasons. One, I want to give kudos to the people that worked on our schedule release. That's all I'm going to say. That worked on our schedule release, because I'm not going to get in trouble of giving any hints of what it is. Worked on our schedule release because I'll tell you, this has been months in the making, and it took a ton of work. A lot of the people that were involved. It's really going to be a cool thing, and I think you fans are going to love it. So I want to give all those guys props and gals that worked on it, because it's really going to be awesome stuff. And the last thing I'll say about the schedule is, we do know a couple of things that we think we know, right? And one of them, in concretely, is obviously Colts Patriots in Frankfurt, in Germany. One of the things that I'm going to find fascinating, though, just as a general topic on the schedule, we talked a little bit about this offline yesterday, Alex. Last year was my first year. I missed one game, Miami. Remember, I had COVID. Couldn't go to Miami. But they traveled for the whole week to Miami. Right. And we traveled the whole week to Vegas in the preseason. Yeah. We traveled the whole week for Miami. Then we traveled that week out west with Vegas and Arizona.
It was Arizona.
Arizona, then Vegas. Yeah. This year, we already know we have Germany. Yeah. So that's already going to be time change, long flight, probably 4 or 5 days out there, I would assume. That's just a guess. I'm not saying anything. I do wonder, based off of how this schedule is structured, I'm really fascinated to see if they maybe go back a little bit on all of the, let's call it, extended travel, right? The extended stays. Look, you can't control who you play. We know that. The opponents, you can't control that. You got to go out to Vegas this year again. You got to go to Denver. You got to go to Dallas. You got to make those trips. That's what's on the schedule. But the point I'm getting at from a competitive standpoint is I'm not 100% sure that all of the extended travel that we did last year truly benefited the team. And I think you can go one way or the other with these things. I think sometimes those West Coast trips where we stayed out in Arizona at a great resort out there in Tucson, I think it was, that could be a team bonding. You could rally around it. Everybody could really, you could sing Kumbaya before bed every night, and all of a sudden you go on a run because you did that. I think the 14 team, right? I think had that. It was like Chargers or something like that out west, and they did that. There are some pockets of this schedule that are set up that you could potentially get one of those trips again. We know the rumors that they could be doing quite a bit of joint practices on the road during the summer in the preseason and in training camp. I'm interested to see how they set up this schedule with those West Coast games or the time zone change games. How much of that are we going to be staying out there for an extended period of time? Both selfishly because I want to know what my life's going to look like, but also from a team competitive standpoint, I do wonder if they reverse course on that a little bit. I know that we both heard in various ways Miami, the trip out west late in the year, that it threw some people off. It did. It threw some people off. So I'm interested to see how that goes with this schedule this year. Are there any things in the schedule that you look for in particular, though, Alex? I know the bye week obviously is a big one, prime time games. But is there one thing in terms of trends or anything like that that you're kind of honing in on?
So every year, the only thing I want from schedule release day, because we know the opponents, right? The one thing I want above all else is Week 12 bye. And I know that's not the ideal bye week. Ernie or Adam said in the schedule release last year was Week 10. Right. I think that 9 to 12 range is probably the best, but it's Thanksgiving. It'd be nice to have Thanksgiving off. Also,
selfish.
Well, it is totally selfish. Yeah. It is on my bucket list to go to the Iron Bowl. Alabama, so Auburn.
Selfish. This is
what is it's the only way I'll ever be able to do it
for the Patriots in terms of the competitive.
No, you asked what I look
team.
for. You asked what I look for.
And you're just talking about how you want to go to the Iron Bowl, so you hope that the bye week is the week of the Iron Bowl.
No, just in terms of honestly, this is kind of the way I already know who they're playing. The stuff I really look at, obviously the bye week and how many weeks in a row are you on the road? When do they go down to Miami? But the stuff specific to this year is more out of the box stuff because that's what's more fun anyway. Gillette Stadium hosting Army Navy December 9th, which would be Week 14.
Can't wait for that.
So, but say it seriously because it's awesome.
I'm also a company man, so I can't wait for that.
You going?
I don't know if I have to go. Do I have to go?
You should go. It's incredible. I was there last year. Everybody should go. It is unbelievable. And I'm not a company man. I'm saying it is unbelievable.
You're kind of a company man.
So, anyway, that's December 9th, Week 14.
Yeah.
In theory, you could have back-to-back. They could play that game here Saturday, and the Patriots could play Sunday. I don't think that would be... They did in Washington a couple years ago,
There's no bigger slap in the face to Bill Belichick than putting the Patriots on the road the week of Army
Navy. So that's what I'm saying.
There's no way we're on the road for that
Or
week.
Is it do they play Thursday night, right? So he's just back and he can enjoy it. Something like that.
Whatever the way the schedule is structured, Bill is going to be at that game.
So I think that means either home game Sunday or Monday, or just a game Thursday, home or road.
Right.
Right, because if they're on the road Thursday, he'll be back. That'd be fine.
Yeah, we come back right after the game. So,
some of the other intricacies. Do you know the stat about the Niners from last year?
No.
The Niners, teams last year, the week after facing the Niners, were 0-16. The Chiefs won after they played the Niners, but they had a bye week in between.
Okay.
So no team won after playing the Niners. Whatever you want to make of that, you can make of it. But the Patriots and Niners have 5 common opponents this year. The entire NFC East and Pittsburgh. So obviously, if they play a team week 1, that wouldn't count. But, see where those teams are on the schedule. Are they the week after the Niners? And I thought I had one other thing, but I guess that's it.
Army, Navy.
It's going to be awesome, man.
I'm the Iron Bowl. All right, so we'll keep an eye on Twitter as we always do. If there is an official, not a rumor, not a leak, we're not going to touch those. But if there is an official announcement of any kind about a Patriot game, we'll obviously break in and talk about that. We're going to get to the better, worse, or same. I'm going to take this call from Patty from Agawam first, though, and then we can clear the calls and things like that, and then we can get into better, worse, same, so we don't have any breakups in our flow here. So, Patty, what's going on, man? How you doing?
What's going on, Jim?
Hey.
So I know Todd in North Carolina had asked last week if you guys were going to do position-by-position breakdown. And I guess if you do, I'm interested to hear how you guys would evaluate Mack and Bailey in the quarterback position, and like where you would rank that in terms of position groups on the team. And if you feel like Mack with Bill O'Brien, I mean, he doesn't have that number one guy, that quote-unquote number one guy. Do you see him surpassing what he did in his rookie year, too? That's all I got, guys.
Thanks for the call, Patty. It's a good segue. That sets us up perfectly, because I was going to start with the quarterbacks for better, worse, same. And I'm going to read off everybody on the roster so that everybody knows all the names. I think everybody knows the names on this one. Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Trace McSorley, currently still under contract in the quarterback room. And I do have Malik Cunningham with the quarterback.
Until we see him run a route, I think he's a quarterback.
So we'll find out, and that's another thing, kind of housekeeping thing. In a couple weeks, we will be out at OTAs. So if he's with the receivers at that point, then I will obviously move him from the quarterback room to the wide receiver room. But for right now, I have Malik Cunningham there. Alex, are the Patriots better, worse, or the same at quarterback? I think it's kind of hard to say that they're better or worse when it's basically the same two guys, right? It's Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. I mentioned Bill O'Brien and kind of getting back to 2021 or maybe even better for Mac Jones. So I guess you could make that argument that just by nature of Bill O'Brien being here, that the performance or the play of the quarterback room should be better. But the names are the names. Like the players themselves are the same for the most part. But I'm willing to say better because of Bill O'Brien, so maybe that's a little bit of a cop-out.
So, I wasn't thinking about it in that sense. I was thinking about just the players. I think the quarterback play will be better with Bill O'Brien. If I had to just evaluate the room, I'd actually say a little worse because they lose that veteran presence of Brian Hoyer. And
I agree, hear what you're saying.
So you're going to ask me how much does that matter?
I don't know how much it mattered to them. Because Brian Hoyer to me
should have mattered.
Brian Hoyer to me feels like somebody that they kind of viewed as someone that was asking too many questions.
Who's them?
What do you mean, who's them?
I think the other quarterbacks appreciated having him there. Let me put it that way.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I think some of the pushback on the offensive coaching staff, which we are both on the record saying very warranted.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think some of the pushback on the offensive coaching staff last year came from certain guys that are no longer here.
That's fair, but I wouldn't necessarily say it was the right move to get rid of those guys.
Okay, that's fair.
Having Brian Hoyer in that room, a veteran quarterback who's seen a lot of football, I think brought inherent value. How much value? You could say it's not a lot. That's fine. But, and again, I'm parsing here, really splitting hairs here, right? Like, if I have to pick one, you know how I always try to do the outside-the-box answers? I'm actually trying to stick to the exercise this time. If I have to say better or worse, I think it's worse because I think even if it was very minimal, there was value in having Brian Hoyer's experience in that room. They don't have it anymore. That's pretty much it. I like what McSorley and we'll see with Cunningham bring as potential scout team guys, but you can, they had corners playing scout team quarterback to get that athletic guy in there, right? I think Brian Hoyer's knowledge and experience was valuable.
That's fair. That's fair. I didn't really think of it that way because, again, I don't think the ambiguous they, I don't necessarily think they think of it that way based off of last year.
So I'm just thinking,
like, why else? Because it cost them money to move on.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
So they are paying Brian Hoyer
not
to be here.
But I don't think it was the right move.
That's fair.
And I'll say that I am, and you. So you're factoring in a lot of the coaches, Bill O'Brien. Yeah. I am just looking at the 4 guys in the room, or however at whatever position. I'm just looking at
the collection of
right. When they go into that meeting.
Yeah.
Not who's at the front of the room leading it, who's sitting in the chairs.
Yeah.
And that is, you went from Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Brian Hoyer, Garrett Gilbert, to Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Trace McSorley, Malik Cunningham. I'm comparing A to B. That's it.
Okay. So we don't get too caught up in the minutia here, as we tend to do. I guess the other question with the quarterbacks before we move on is, do you feel as though we will get out to training camp in August and it will look anything like a competition? Like, remember in 21, we were both here covering the team. Mac Jones and Cam Newton were clearly in a competition, and I would actually say that they tried their best to make it look like Cam was QB1 and it wasn't really a competition. But what would happen, just so that when we get into this, people remember us kind of breaking this down, Cam would get that first drive. So whenever they broke into team, like whenever it got into 11-on-11s or even 7-on-7, we all had to say that Cam Newton was the first quarterback in the huddle.
Right. But
Cam would lead a single drive. He'd run like 4 or 5 plays. And then Mac Jones would run the next 25. Or whatever number it ended up being. And you'd get to the end of the day, and Cam would have attempted 12 passes in practice, and Mac Jones would have attempted 30 in practice. And that was our first, and a lot of people's first taste, because Brady was here, and there was no quarterback competition in the summer.
At the most, we did it with backup quarterback.
Right.
I remember, was it
Stidham and
Hoyer? Stidham and Hoyer, was the last one.
And I was
thrilling.
I was here for the COVID year in 20 with Cam and
that was
Stidham,
never a competition.
but that was also just neither one of them were great. So it was kind of just picking at straws. So what do you think that this would result? Because now I think we know a little bit. Okay, if Bailey is reps wise, if they're about even, and Zappi's throwing with some regulars, if he's breaking the huddle and it's Tyquan Thornton going one direction and Kendrick Bourne going, you kind of have an idea of, all right, this is sort of a competition. Do you feel like that's going to happen this summer, or do you feel like they're going to commit to Mac and we're going to go down that road?
I think they're going to go back and forth with it. And you just hit on it. It's not necessarily about the number of reps.
Yeah.
And it was easier to explain away in 2021 because Mac's a rookie. He needs the reps. Cam's been here, right? And if you looked at
That's how they got us, though.
Well, but even though Mac was running more reps, he was running them mostly with the second team.
Yeah.
So he threw twice as many passes, but he was out there with the second offense, right?
Right.
None of the all the starters had half as many reps as the backups.
Yeah.
So, it maybe from a bird's eye view, it looked like a competition, but it sort of clearly wasn't until that practice against the Giants when Cam missed it and Mac tore him up, right?
Yeah.
It's a little less clear this year because you can't necessarily come in and say, well, Bailey needs the reps.
Right.
Right? About the same experience. So it's going to be harder for them to hide whether or not it's competition, because the other thing is, it's going to come down to who's working with who, right? If Mac Jones runs 10 reps and Bailey Zappi runs 20 reps, but Mac Jones is throwing to Devontae Parker and Juju Smith-Schuster, and Bailey Zappi's throwing to, Trey Nixon.
Right.
Well, okay, he ran twice as many reps, but he's throwing to guys who aren't going to make the team.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's always
going to be about who they're throwing to, not necessarily the number of reps.
And I would also say a dead giveaway for people that come out to training camp, and hopefully there will be plenty of those opportunities this summer, the offensive line. Because the starting 5 is a starting 5, right? And I know that we're not necessarily supposed to report these things specifically, but who's David Andrews snapping the ball to?
Yeah.
if David Andrews ain't snapping the ball to Bailey Zappi.
But Evan, they're both getting snaps from guys named Andrews.
If it's Jake Andrews or it's Cody Russi or it's James Ferentz and David Andrews is attached to Mac Jones's hip as the only center that's snapping the ball to Mac Jones all summer long, then we know who's QB1, right? Like that those are the types of things that we look for as well. I actually come on the other side of this. I think that this is going to be, and this is just gut. I have no inside information, but I think that this is going to be a commitment to Mac Jones, at least to start the season. And I think the only way that you can properly do that, and I say that because, let's face it, we both talked about this enough, but they did not properly handle the position last year.
Right.
The only way that you can properly commit to Mac Jones in the summer and really try to hit the ground running and basically act like last year didn't happen and just kind of make it feel as much as you can like you're picking up from the end of 2021 and you're going into a fake year 2 but year 3 is to really just go down that road and not make it as any sort of question. Now, I think that that's how it's going to start. If Mac Jones gets into the regular season and struggles, then I think that will open the door for Bailey Zappi. But I think it's Mac Jones' job to lose. I think it's his job to lose for the time being. I think year 3 of Mac Jones with Bill O'Brien here is a big year for the organization to figure out what they have in Mac Jones. So I don't think it's going to be a truly full-scale competition of any sort in training camp, and I think that they're committed to Mac. I think that Bill Belichick tried to, when Greg Bedard asked him during the draft, was it bouquets of flowers thrown at Mac Jones? And no, not necessarily, but I do think that he tried to say some things to kind of squash a little bit of that, and I think that there's going to be a real clear message once we get out to camp. And the last thing I'll say about the quarterbacks, and you can weigh in on this too, but I feel really strongly about this. Isn't that what you want? Like, as a Patriots fan, isn't what you want is for us to get out there, even in the spring, even in a couple weeks, and see Mac Jones, like, commanding things. Like, Mac Jones being a leader, Mac Jones having that swagger back, having that... Remember, even before... I know everybody, and I myself include, sometimes falls into this trap of saying Mac wasn't on board with what was going on last year from the jump. In the spring, he was kind of bouncing around. Remember, he was making some good downfield throws, obviously without pads and a live pass rush. And then we all learned that as soon as the pads came on in August, that kind of went out the door. But isn't that what you want? Don't you want Mac to take the QB1 job by the reins and the bull by the horns, whatever cliche you want to use, and not have question marks about that position? I feel like that's a big thing for me, is like a lot of people, I think, just love the drama, and I get that. We're in that business, right? The drama feeds the beast. But isn't it better as a Patriot fan that Mac Jones actually works out and has a good year and like is the man from the jump, and there's no questions, and we're not in August talking about because if we're in August talking about quarterback competitions, and this is my whole take on this,
right?
They don't have a quarterback.
Right.
Guess what? They don't have a quarterback. It's not Bailey Zappi. It's not Mac. They don't have a quarterback. So I hope that Mac Jones proves that they do have a quarterback. That's what I'm optimistic about.
It's the easiest path forward.
Yeah, and I hope that's the case. So that's your quarterbacks. You think it's going to be a little bit of competition, though? You think that door is already?
I think they
ajar?
want it to be. I think Mac can win it, but I think they want it to be.
Yeah.
You think we've gone through this whole summer and they're going to come out and Mac's going to be the unquestioned starter? Or sorry, this whole winter of...
I like to think that cooler heads will prevail. Maybe that's just the optimist in me, but I like to think that cooler heads are going to prevail, and what you just mentioned, it's the cleanest path. It's the cleanest path forward, and I think last year, and I hope that they would agree, last year, the Bailey Zappi, the Zappi fever... Let's face it, Zappi fever did nobody any favors. It did nobody any favors. It didn't make the team better. It didn't make Mac Jones better. It didn't make any of it better. It caused drama, and quite frankly, more importantly, internally, it caused friction.
Right.
So that did nobody any good. So going and setting up that again, and I think that was what was so bonkers about the situation last year. We always go back to the Chicago game. They set it up. Like, they did it to themselves to an extent to create all the noise about the quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah.
So avoiding that this year by coming out in camp and kind of putting the weight behind Mac Jones, I think is important. All right, let's move on to the running backs. And if you want to weigh in, 855-PATS-500 is the phone number. You can email in webradio@patriots.com, and we'll love your opinion on all this stuff. And I know some people, Alex, don't feel the same way that I do about Mac Jones. They want to see the competition. So maybe you feel that way. All right, moving on to running backs. This one's interesting because there is some turnover here. Maybe a little bit more significantly than the top of the quarterback depth chart. Ramondre Stevenson, the guy we just spoke to this morning, James Robinson, Pierre Strong, Kevin Harris, Ty Montgomery, and J.J. Taylor. So historically speaking, Alex, they keep 4 running backs.
Yeah.
4 guys.
It's been 3 at times, though, because they'll throw somebody in the practice squad that they can elevate.
But 4 guys, I think, is safe to assume out of this group, because I think there are going to be 4 rosterable running backs to come out of this group. We know Ramondre Stevenson's a lock. I would like to think we can confidently say that Pierre Strong is probably a lock too, just because of his draft status last year, and cutting a 4th-round pick in year 2 seems a little bit unrealistic. But from there, it's really anybody's game. And I look at a guy like James Robinson, who I think could add some things to this team, and I'm a little, I'm interested to see what he's got in training camp. I think that he could help. James Robinson has basically no guaranteed money given to him on his contract. He's a very, for lack of a better word, cuttable player at the moment. If he doesn't look reinvigorated, if he doesn't look like he has any juice, he's a player that they could move on from pretty easily. So I look at this and I think Ramondre Stevenson and Pierre Strong are really the only 2 guys that I feel like are definitely going to be on this team. I think the 3 and 4 spot are kind of up from grabs at that point. So better, worse, or same at the running back position.
I think worse, starting off. There's a chance they end up better because if Pierre Strong emerges as a pass-catching back, now you don't have to run Ramondre Stevenson in the ground like they did last year. So he's fresher down the stretch. You have a good pass-catching back. If Kevin Harris develops, you have that, bowling ball, short yardage, secondary early down back behind Ramondre.
Yeah.
And then you just need one of James Robinson or Ty Montgomery to develop as an option, right? As just a depth player. And I don't think any of that's unrealistic, but coming in, they lost Damian Harris. They don't have a clear-cut pass-catching back. They have candidates between Strong and Robinson and Montgomery, but that's got to be sorted out. So I'll say initially they're worse, but there's upside there. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I think that I don't want to say they're better because I do feel like Damian Harris was a good Patriot, and I don't want to undersell him in terms of what he brought to the table. I know he was injured a lot the last couple of years, especially last year. That hurt, right? That hurt his Patriot tenure. I actually love it. I criticize their roster management a lot. I actually really love how they handle running backs. I think they do it exactly how you should do it. For the most part, 3rd and 4th round picks, recycle them every 3 or 4 years. Never get married to any of these guys, right? You never, commit, big money dollars or years to a running back. I think that they do a nice job of recycling that position because for the most part, they understand that position is replaceable. Like those guys are kind of a dime a dozen and you can kind of cycle through them. And that's what we know now in today's NFL and the way that things work nowadays. So I like how they handle the running backs position. The one guy that I'm really bullish on, I really think Pierre Strong is going to be something. I think we saw enough, especially in that Arizona game, obviously, but even in the Raider game, he had a couple of good carries too. And that West Coast swing last year, for me to be optimistic that Pierre Strong is going to bring something to the table. I want to see Pierre Strong on the field. And I look at a guy like Bill O'Brien, and him being the coach that he is, he loves to think about matchups, who's a problem, like who's a matchup weapon, who's a guy that can win foot races or is so quick that a linebacker or safety is not going to be able to cover them in the slot, or coming horizontally across the field, this guy is going to win races this way or that way or whatever. And I look at a guy like Pierre Strong and I look at that 40 time and everything, and I just get that guy the football and try to get that guy into space a handful of times a game. it's similar to how everybody feels about Marcus Jones or like Tyquan, right? Just get the ball in their hands and see what they can do with it. I think Pierre Strong is going to be a really good player for them this year. I'm optimistic that he is just following in a very similar path to a lot of other running backs in that mold, right? The Shane Vereen's, the James Whites, those players, and we'll see him year 2 really take off. And
well, you make a good point there. Sorry to cut you off,
no,
but I've seen a lot of people say, well, if they were good, the Patriots would have played him last year.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. I know they needed a running back last year. They did. They played Ramondre Stevenson way too much, but this is just what they do. Even in 2019, I don't remember who it was, but a couple guys got hurt. And they still didn't play Damian Harris, who was a rookie at the time. Like, I forget what they did, but they went out of their way to not play rookie Damian Harris. And that was kind of the case last year. I feel like they went out of their way, right?
And then in Arizona, they both had good games.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. From what we did see, and I'm not saying they're going to both come in and be Pro Bowlers right away, but from what we saw, I'd say they handled themselves. They looked at the least capable.
Yeah.
So I don't... If you have like actual football reasons to write them off, I guess we could have that discussion, call in. But simply saying, well, they didn't play last year, so they're not good, that's really not how it generally works in New England. If you're a rookie running back, unless you were picked in the first round or your name's Ramondre Stevenson, you don't play. You mentioned James White, 14 touches as a rookie.
Yeah.
And I remember people were writing him off.
Shane Vereen was similar, right? Like
he had a couple more. I think he had like 50.
But he didn't play a ton.
He didn't play a ton.
As a rookie.
But the James White one I always go back to because I remember people were thinking, like that year, they used to, whatever it was, 3rd, 4th round pick on this guy. He doesn't play. He's a bust.
Yeah, he's a 4th round.
You know, he could barely get on the field last year. Yeah. And he turned out okay.
Right. I'm optimistic about Pierre Strong. And I think that in general, you got to hope that at least one of those guys, Harris or Strong, ends up being a good player for you that should at the very least, be able to back up and spell Ramondre Stevenson.
Right.
Because... if you go back and look at the draft last year at running back, Alex, if those guys can't play, then they missed badly at that spot.
Tyler Algier from BYU.
Had a good, decent rookie year.
Good. I mean, these are power backs. These aren't receiving backs, but they're both good players. Couple more went. Then they took Kevin Harris. Tyler Beatty I liked. He's in the USFL now, though. Treston Ebner I liked. I think he's still in the Bears. And who else? And then Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round.
Right, so I guess Isaiah Pacheco is really the one, especially
and everybody missed him, but that's the one.
Pierre Strong and Isaiah Pacheco, they both had tied for the fastest 40 in the draft, right, and among running backs. So if you're looking for that speed back, those were kind of your options. It was sort of him or it was Pacheco. But I'm not going down that road because I think he can play. Montgomery and James Robinson, I think, are interesting players for different reasons. I think Montgomery is sort of this mythical creature to a lot of Patriots fans because, frankly, we hyped him up a lot in the training camp. Get it out. Training camp last year. He had a good camp. And there's a lot of talk.
He looked good in week 1, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about him being a contributor and somebody that was going to step in, maybe not on a James White level of production, but maybe something like a Brandon Bolden level of production, right? Somebody that could at least hold down that receiving back role. And he had some versatility because he played wide receiver and running back in his career in Green Bay. And New Orleans had a similar system, the way they use their running backs in the pass game, with some conversion there from his year before that. So I still am not completely out on Ty Montgomery being a contributor, and I think James Robinson, the biggest question with him is kind of similar when we get to wide receiver here in a second.
Yeah, good call splitting up offense and defense because it's 240 and we haven't even gotten a receiver yet.
Keyshawn Butte,
yeah.
It's about injury, right? Like James Robinson tore his Achilles 2 years ago. You hope that a year and a half removed from that Achilles, he's going to get the juice back. But last year with the Jags and the Jets, quite frankly, he did not have the juice. He just didn't have any burst to his running game.
Yeah.
So if he's not going to have that, then I think that he could be somebody that ends up not making this team, simply just because he just doesn't have it, right?
Right.
Now, a guy like Kevin Harris, I think should make the team over both those guys that I just mentioned as well.
But the other thing you have to remember, and this is like the whole new thing that's really changed the way we do roster projections.
Yeah.
Who do they have the best shot at getting on the practice squad? Because even if Kevin Harris is a better player, they might have a better shot at waiving him, getting him to the practice squad, and then they can elevate him versus a guy like James Robinson, who they might lose if they cut.
So James Robinson...
I'm just using those two. You can throw Ty Montgomery in there or whoever.
So he's in year 5 35, correct?
Yeah.
So he might be a vested vet at this point, so he might not pass through waivers. Ty Montgomery definitely doesn't have to pass through waivers.
Right. I think Robinson would.
It's 4 or 5 years. I always forget how many years it is.
Well, it's some of it. It's not years. It's
like playing time and stuff like that too.
It's a whole thing.
So, anyways, the biggest thing to me with the running back position, I'm gonna say same from last year. I think it's this team. Let's do tight ends really quickly, and then we'll take some calls, and we'll spend the next 45 minutes on the wide receivers and the offensive line, which, by the way, I think they have 16 offensive linemen.
Offensive line and linebackers. That's like half the roster.
16. It's unreal. Tight ends. So in my initial projection, I'll read the tight ends off first. Hunter Henry, Mike Gesicki, Matt Sokol, Scotty Washington, and your guy, Johnny Lumpkin.
I think that's our guy after last week. I think that's
so those are your tight ends right now. My roster projection last week that I did, and I know you did one too, only had Hunter Henry and Gesicki on the final roster. That's what they did last year with Jonnu and Henry, and they only had those two guys that made the initial 53. To me, it feels like the same thing where those are two veteran guys that you invested some money in, you invested resources in. Those are the two guys that are going to play, assuming they're healthy. Nobody else is. I know you like Johnny Lumpkin, Alex, but Johnny Lumpkin.
I had him on.
Johnny Lumpkin is not taking away playing time from Mike Gesicki or Hunter Henry.
But let me ask you this: we both know the UDFA streak is important to them. That they keep that going. 19 years in a row for a reason.
I kind of hope it's not. Like I kind of hope it's like.
Do you remember what Jacoby Myers said as a rookie? That I think you're the one who asked him this question.
Oh.
That a big part of the reason he signed in New England was they had that streak and he knew he was going to have a real shot to make the team.
You think it's important to them because it gravitates toward
right. It helps them recruit essentially. UDFA. Yeah. I'm not saying it's important to them like we've got to do this because it's cool. I think it's because they can go to a guy and say 19 years in a row we've had a rookie. And look, they've kind of maneuvered it in the past.
Yeah. Like remember the year that Quinn Nordine
they had Quinn Nordine and Nick Folk technically on the roster. Right.
Yeah.
I think it's something they care about.
Yeah.
Who's the most? They got three guys.
Yeah.
Jordan Heelig, Malik Cunningham, who you hate. You don't hate. I know.
Don't say that.
Jordan Heelig, Malik Cunningham, and Johnny Lumpkin.
Yeah.
Realistically, of those three, who's the most likely to make the roster?
Yeah. I think that there is definitely an argument, and I would say just for better or worse, same. I would say better because I think inherently speaking, production-wise, like how is Mike Gesicki worse than Jonnu Smith?
No, I think they're better. Gesicki's an upgrade.
Yeah.
I also think they might like Scotty Washington, and I'm not saying that overly shifts it, but if you get, you elevate him off the practice squad for a couple games, he gives you something.
He's a really he's huge.
And
he's athletic.
No, there's a lot of interesting parts of his game.
A little bit something.
So I'm not saying he's going to come in and make a difference. But again, if you elevate him for a couple games, he might be able to give you something. But the thing with Lumpkin to me is, I don't think he's going to take playing time away from Hunter Henry or Mike Gesicki. But what happens when you get in the red zone?
Right.
And you want to go with that big formation. Plus, he plays special teams.
Yeah.
They'll find a role for him. It's not going to be expansive. But, again, of those three guys, Healing is just special teams. He's not going to help you on defense or offense.
Yeah.
Malik Cunningham's role is going to have to be highly specialized.
Right.
Or you get a blocking tight end who will help you cover kicks.
So
it's easy.
The thing that you just mentioned about his blocking, I think, is important because I look at this group right now.
Yeah.
And if there's, I'm not going to call people out by names. I'm not going to do it. There's some people that feel like Jonnu Smith was a really good blocker. I'm not necessarily in that school. I think he was a adequate NFL blocker. Like he was starting caliber in that category. Do I think he was on the scale of starting to Rob Gronkowski? He's definitely just more towards the starting side of things, right? But he could hold his own in that respect. Neither Hunter Henry nor Mike Gesicki gives you much in that regard. And I think that Mike Gesicki will be a better blocker here than he has been in the past because I think two things. One, I think they'll demand it out of him. I think Bill O'Brien will demand it out of him, and Bill will too. And secondly, he's signed a 1-year contract for a guy that's been this is a really prove it year for him.
Right.
So I think he's going to go out there and he's going to give it his all in all phases. But his all doesn't mean that he's all of a sudden going to become Mark Bavaro, right? Like he's still going to have some short. So it's a little bit of a low key hole in the roster. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's the most important thing in the world, but a little bit of a low-key hole in this roster right now is they don't have a true difference-making inline blocking tight end, and they don't have a fullback. So they don't really have that in their repertoire. Like if they have to go into a period of the season where they really need to pound the rock and run the football effectively, they don't really have that. They don't have that guy. They don't have a traditional fullback like a James Devlin or a Jakob Johnson. They don't have like a versatile blocker more like a Jonnu Smith. They don't have the hand in the dirt, third tackle tight end. So the question is, I guess they have 16 offensive linemen.
Right.
So can one of those do they do more tackle eligible stuff and do they get away with it that way? Or does somebody like your boy Johnny Lumpkin make the roster as a, Michael Humamanawanu?
That's what I'm saying. Even if it's just for a couple
weeks. Did I say it right? I think I got it.
Humamanawanu.
I think I nailed that.
Just for a couple weeks, even if it's, something that he comes on and then they have to pull somebody off IR at start season, whatever. But he's going to be around. I think he's going to be around. I think he's going to play. I do.
That's the one thing that I know a lot of people are surprised they didn't draft a tight end with tight end one upside, like a Darnell Washington or a Tucker Kraft or something like that.
Zach Kuntz.
What I'm like so surprised about is that they didn't even take one of those guys that was more of like a specialized blocking tight end a little bit later.
Yeah.
They just completely passed on the position altogether. Maybe it's Johnny Lumpkin. Maybe.
I tell you, I think he makes the team. I really do. I think he makes the team.
I keep going back to, like, if you go into the week and it's Tuesday and you feel like, all right, we're playing this defense that's fast.
Well, look at week one or what we think is going to, what's rumored to be week one, right?
Maybe them. But you go into the week and you're just like, this defense is undersized, it's fast, but they're light. And we want to just run them over. Like, that's how we're going to play this game. Like, like it's 2018 Super Bowl run, right? Like, we're just going to run these people over. How do they really get into that personnel right now? With the tight ends that they have.
Johnny Lumpkin.
With the lack of fullback. Like, how do they really do that if
Johnny
that's
Lumpkin.
the game plan? Maybe it's Johnny Lumpkin. All right, we take some of these calls and then we'll do the meaty positions with the wide receivers in the O-line. Max in Seekonk. What's up, Max?
How you doing, guys? Really enjoy you guys working together. Happy you guys got on Catch-22 after your upgrade there, Evan. I have a question for you guys. I know that Evan, Alex, you mentioned this with Mike Cadlick. The line for Mac Jones is 4,000 yards this season.
Yeah.
I think something that everyone's missing is that if you average out Mac Jones over 17 games last year, he was only down about 150, 175 yards. Curious your guys' thoughts. Thanks.
No problem. So this is definitely a Cadlick angle. His line is 4,000 yards passing.
Yeah, 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns.
That's a lot. That's the over-under on his touchdowns, 25. That's a lot. I mean, last year he had what? 10?
Like 21, but it was in fewer games.
He had 21 passing touchdowns last year?
That sounds right.
No.
Was it less than that?
I feel like it was less than that.
Maybe it was on pace for 21.
Anyways,
he had 14.
I knew it was something bad.
I said over on yards, under on touchdowns.
I could see that. We were kind of just talking about. I still feel like at their core, and this kind of goes back to like Dante Scarnecchia and Ivan Fears and stuff. So maybe not so much anymore, but I still think at their core, they want to be a team that when it's like 3rd and 2 from the goal line, they can run the ball in.
Right.
Like they would rather, in my opinion, and I think this is some of their red zone issues that they had last year, that they got too far away from this. When they get 1st and goal from the 5-yard line, they'd rather run it 3 times into the end zone, right? And not have to throw it. And I think last year they kind of did get a little pass happy down there. And that would be a big bonus, I think, this year of getting back to their roots of being a good short yardage running team and being good in the trenches, and Adrian Clem and Bill O'Brien. Yes.
Yeah, no, I actually think they're okay running in from like the 5. My bigger issue is like the 5 to the 15.
Yeah, they're like mid or high red zone numbers are terrible last year.
So and that's why I took the under on touchdowns. I think they're going to get down to like the 1 or 2 yard line a bunch and just pounded in.
Yeah. All right. So 4,000 yards. That seems like a lot. But now, I guess with the extra game, it's not quite as much as it used to be. But 4,000 yards seems like a lot. Was he 4,000 his rookie year?
I think he was like just short of 3,800 his rookie year.
Yeah. Doesn't that seem like a lot?
Well, I mean, in theory, 200 yards over 17 games. That's 11 more yards per game.
Yeah.
That's one more completion. And he completed 67% of his passes. I guess that's pretty high. Yeah. Well, look, how about this? We've talked about and this will segue us into receivers.
Yeah.
We've talked about how the big difference between Jacoby Myers and Juju Smith-Schuster is that yard after catch ability.
Maybe that's it.
They find 11 more yards per game in Juju creating after he catches the ball.
Just to say,
yeah,
if he hits on those marks, 4,025 touchdowns, we're talking about $40 million a year.
Oh, no, they have a quarterback. No, they have a quarterback, yeah.
They're talking about giving Mac Jones Daniel Jones' extension.
What we said at the beginning. What did Daniel Jones do last year? He was probably
probably
around
pretty
those numbers,
comparable.
Right? Hang on, let's see.
They probably just took it right from Daniel Jones' box score. It's probably like 4,000.
No, Daniel Jones was actually not even close to that last year. Daniel Jones was 3,215 touchdowns.
And he still got
Now, he only threw 5 interceptions.
And he ran
he ran for
like 600 yards, I think.
700 yards.
Yeah.
So, even if you include the rushing, he didn't get to 4,000 yards.
Yeah.
Whew.
All right, Eldred, what's going on?
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Question. Out of the wide receiver spot, do you think Slater going to hold up that spot as a special teamer like he's been doing, instead of putting somebody in there that can play special teams and maybe contribute and catching passes?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because somebody brought this up in my mentions yesterday too. I don't think it was you, Eldred. I think it was somebody else. And I don't understand the thinking. Like because they're going to carry at least 5 wide receivers, not including Matthew Slater, right?
Right.
So Matthew Slater's spot he's not taking up somebody on the wide receivers depth chart. Like he's not.
Yeah, he is.
How is he taking? They're going to carry.
They got him a special team, but he's in the wide receiver spot.
So,
but they're not carrying.
Eldred, what if I told you last year, I think it was Bill Belichick, maybe it was Steve Belichick referred to him as a safety.
But ultimately what I'm getting at is with Slater, and this is like a real semantics argument here, they're going to carry 5 real wide receivers, not including Matthew Slater.
Right.
They're going to carry 5 guys at the wide receiver position, just like every other team. So he's not going to take anybody's spot at the wide receiver position. Like that's like what I can't wrap my head around. The spots that he's taking up are, guys that are at the back end of the roster. Like, are we all gonna lose sleep because Matthew Slater is taking, Raleigh Webb's roster spot?
Right. That's basically what you're talking about here is Raleigh Webb making the team over Matthew Slater.
Right. So they're going to carry 5 real wide receivers. And if they wanted, and now we can get into it, and thanks for the call, Eldred, because we were going to segue into this anyways.
All right.
If they wanted, they could carry 6. Like Matthew Slater is not going to prevent them from carrying 5 to 6 to 4 to whatever wide receiver number they want to. They'll figure out the numbers with him in the equation. And if you look at like my roster projection, your roster projection, the guys that they are cutting, do you really think that those guys are bringing more to the football team than Matthew Slater?
No.
Like, do you really believe that they, especially on game day, like not even talking about, I get it. Like they could maybe keep an Isaiah Bolden or Amir Speed if one of those guys could end up making it, and that's a developmental player. But you're developing Amir Speed to hopefully develop into Matthew Slater.
Right.
So unless he's just better than Matthew Slater at this point in Slater's
he's better
career,
than the greatest to ever do it.
Yeah.
The only way Slater's not making the team is if he gets into camp and decides he wants to retire. That's it. Right. He's going to be here. They want special teams guys. He brings that leadership ability. He's going to be here.
All right. So that segues us into wide receivers. They currently have 7 wide receivers signed after releasing Lynn Bowden yesterday. They have 7. They have Juju Smith-Schuster.
I have 8.
You have 8?
Yeah.
Who's your 8th?
Are you counting Raleigh Webb?
No.
Oh.
Raleigh Webb counts as a special teamer.
All right, then
along
7.
With Matthew Slater.
All right.
Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, I keep doing that, Demario Douglas, and Trey Nixon.
What did you keep calling Demario Douglas during the Shrine Bowl week?
I don't remember.
You couldn't get his name right. I don't remember what it was.
Oh, it was Dallas Daniels, who was like
you kept getting Dallas Daniels and Demario Douglas mixed up.
So it was like Zay Flowers. So I'll just do the tiers. Zay Flowers was the top tier.
Yeah.
Demario Douglas was the second tier. And then Dallas Daniels from where did he go again?
Jackson State.
I thought it was Jackson State. Jackson State was the third tier, and the Patriots Zay didn't only practice the one day.
Right.
So Demario Douglas and Dallas Daniels were just interchangeable in the slot, and they both had the alliteration. There we go.
Yeah.
With the D's and I couldn't do it.
Well, Dallas Daniels ended up with the Cowboys, so shout out to him.
There we go. So I think this is Elder's point and why he called in, and I get it. In theory, they have 6 guys that have the talent to be on the roster. Sorry, Trey Nixon. 6 guys that have the talent to be on the roster with realistically 5 spots. They could carry 6, but they don't normally carry 6.
Do you remember what we did last year?
And the reason why they don't normally carry 6, just like the reason why they don't normally carry extra bodies elsewhere, is you could relate it and say that it is because they keep Matthew Slater and they keep Cody Davis and they keep Brendan, right? Like they keep the guys that are only going to play in the kicking game, but they have a spot for one of the rookies.
Do you remember what we did last year? We had that big debate about who was it? It was Trey Nixon, Christian Wilkerson, and Lil Jordan Humphrey.
Yeah.
And it was 3 guys for the 5th receiver spot.
Yeah.
And then they only kept 4 receivers.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So who knows how many they'll keep? I had 6 on my first roster projection. There's a way they can do it. Now, they're going to have to be thin somewhere else. I had them thin on the defensive line. I had them thin at corner.
Yeah.
But what helps them is the 6 guys we're talking about here, who again are, and I have it listed alphabetically. So Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah.
Those 6 guys all have 6 pretty different skill sets. If there's one overlap, it's Kendrick Bourne to Kayshon Boutte.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if Kayshon Boutte plays well enough to earn a roster spot, you can't expose him by waiving him because he will get claimed.
Yeah.
So, unless they're going to trade Kendrick Bourne, you have Parker, who's really your one true X receiver on the roster. Even the guys we're not talking about here, like, they don't have a backup, roster fodder guy.
Especially a guy. I mean, you could make the argument that somebody like Tyquan could play the X, but in that body type, they don't have anybody else.
Exactly. Juju is, the slot. He's making the team, right? He's making, but even still, his skill set is. Is there another guy on the team that has the same skill set as the same prototype of Juju Smith-Schuster?
He's not as thick, but I think there is some overlap between, like we just did the slot receiver Shrine Bowl tier.
Yeah,
is Juju Smith-Schuster, Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte.
So a little bit of a tier there. Like I think Juju, Kayshon Boutte, and for the role we think they're going to play here.
Yeah.
Kayshon Boutte and Kendrick Bourne are not the big slots, the power slots that Juju Smith-Schuster is, right? In that regard, you lose that element. Obviously, Tyquan Thornton's the speed guy. Right. Kendrick Bourne is your kind of move wide receiver, and then Douglas is your like speed slot, your shifty slot, or your gadget player. Right? So it's not like you look at 2 guys and say, well, they're both competing, even if they're competing maybe for one spot, like you said, that 5th receiver, they're different roles. Right. There's not a lot where 2 guys are competing for the same role. So unless Boutte's excellent, Bourne is bad, and they can trade him.
Right.
I think there's a real path to them keeping all 6. And I think, to go back to the exercise, I'll say better at receiver, and I think noticeably.
I think they're better at receiver too. I think that I still will pound the table that Juju's an upgrade over Jacoby Myers, and I'm going to still stick to that.
For what they need, he is better.
Right.
And there are spots like
there's certainly elements of Jacoby. Jacoby is a better natural separator.
So for what it's
Juju.
worth, I think Juju is a better fit in New England than Jacoby is at this point in time. I think Jacoby's a better fit for the Raiders than Juju would have been. You really get down to system when you talk about these 2 guys.
And I really think that Jacoby has elements of his game that are better than Juju's, but I think Juju's, like you said, in particular after the catch,
they needed the yak, right? That's what it comes down to,
and his ability to create some bigger plays. So that's I think a big thing. I am really, really excited. I wouldn't use the word optimistic. I wouldn't use the word bullish. I am excited to see how Bill O'Brien is going to use Tyquan Thornton. I'm just excited about a real offensive coordinator coming in here and having a guy with 4.28 speed like that can run like that. How does he get him off the line of scrimmage? How does he use him in motion? How does he use different alignment tricks like stacks and bunches and things like that to get him off of press coverage or away from contact in the first 5 to 10 yards of the route? There's a lot of potential there for Bill O'Brien to create foot races for Tyquan Thornton going this way, going that way, going up the field, going horizontally across the field that could really make Tyquan Thornton an extremely fun player for the Patriots. I'm not going to put yards and touchdowns and catches on it. I don't know how productive it's going to be, but I think that there's going to be a lot of elements in that. For that reason, I'm really thinking this could be a lot better. If Bill O'Brien can get Tyquan to be the player that was a game changer at Baylor, using similar tricks of the trade, I think that they have a really fun room in that regard.
We have breaking schedule news from the Patriots Twitter account itself.
Oh, what's that?
Breaking. The Patriots will play here this season. It's a picture of Gillette Stadium.
Oh.
That was a good one. Because people have like the alerts on their phones, so they're going to see breaking. The Patriots will play here. Wow. And they'll click it. It's going to be a picture of Gillette. That's well done.
Good job, Neil and Veronica. Good job tricking everybody.
I like that. It's funny. That's my kind of humor. It's funny.
Anyways,
also shout out to the guy in the comments who says we're not entertaining. That's entertaining.
Someone said we're not entertaining?
Some guy is very upset that first he said we're not entertaining, we don't know anything. Oh. And now the other people in the chat have talked him down to just we're not entertaining. Which I will admit the show gets a little dense at times, but I think that's why people are here.
That's the point.
Yeah,
exactly. That's the point. If you want entertaining, then, not the place for you. We're talking football here.
It's entertaining to a certain kind of person.
Okay. The rookies. The argument to me for keeping both rookies, I have a hard time thinking that both rookies are going to fully play themselves into roster spots. I think
somebody else would have to have a bad camp.
It's being too optimistic. Yeah. They're 6th-round picks for a reason. I think it'd be really optimistic to think both guys are so good in camp.
Well,
Nope.
No, but what is the reason Kayshon Boutte is a 6th-round pick?
Reasons. We know the reasons.
I know we know the
reasons.
Character
concerns, injury concern. Demario Douglas, I love as a player.
Yeah.
We know that. But at the bottom line is that he's small and undersized and making a big leap in competition. There is a chance that his play strength and his ability to run through contact isn't good enough for this league.
You know who else was small and undersized and leap in play strength and something competition, whatever the hell you just said?
What?
Marcus Jones.
Yes, but
that's what Demario Douglas' role is going to be, I think.
Yeah, and I really am high on him. I think he's going to be a good player here. I'm just saying that it's very optimistic to think both of those guys are like studs in training camp to the point where they have to make the team, right? You can't part with either of them. The argument to me that's better for it is that you really don't have very much on your contract past this year at that position.
Right.
So just looking at those two guys as developmental pieces in the pipeline for 2024 and beyond, I think is important because Devontae Parker is a free agent after this year. Kendrick Bourne's a free agent after this year. You have Juju, you have Tyquan, and that's it.
Yeah.
In terms of proven NFL talent.
Well, I think that's it. I think Trey Nixon's in the last year.
Yeah, and I know Tyquan proven NFL talent is a little strong right now, but
a guy with potential.
Guy that was a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah.
So Tyquan's going to be here in 2024. Juju's going to be here in 2024, and that's it. So if you're looking at the depth chart next year, one of these rookie wide receivers is going to be kept regardless. But keeping both of them and keeping 6 or carrying 6 or trading Kendrick Bourne or trading Devontae Parker in the summer to keep 5, including both rookies, there is a contract argument to be made there. That they just need bodies for 2024. They just need to have guys around that have been in the system, that have played football here for 2024. I'm not ready to put 6 on the roster. I cut Boutte. I did. I know that is tough to do because I think that it could go either way with him. Demario Douglas feels like an easier projection to me. It just feels I know what he is and what he isn't, and there's a role for him on the team as that Marcus Jones gadget player type of guy in year one.
Kick returner too.
Yeah, if they want to use him in that capacity. Kayshon Boutte is, like you were saying, a little bit redundant to guys like Juju and certainly Kendrick Bourne. He's going to have to push Kendrick Bourne either completely off the roster or just at least push him for playing time to make the team. Like, he's going to have to be really, really in Kendrick Bourne's rearview mirror.
I just think even if there's not a 2023 football reason for keeping Kayshon Boutte, I think exposing him is risky. And you remember, you burned that contract. You cut him. He's no longer signed for 4 years. Now you have to keep signing him to futures deals, and he becomes an ERFA, an RFA.
Yeah.
I think you got to find a way to hold on to him. Now, there's also injuries are going to happen. It's unfortunate, so maybe there's another way it happens. But even if you don't think both of those guys are going to be lockdown contributors this year, and I think Douglas will contribute some. I think Boutte can contribute maybe more in 2024, 2025. But if you think those guys are going to be pieces, that 4-year contract is valuable.
Especially in a 6th-round 4-year contract.
Right. I think in that sense alone, they find a way to keep both guys on the roster, even if they have to do some serious juggling. I think they're going to keep 6 receivers this year.
It's a good point. It's the contract and the longevity of the other contracts in that room. We talked to Matt Groh. I don't know if it was during the draft or before the draft when he mentioned it would be foolish to not look ahead at contract situations for 2024 and beyond when you're drafting.
You have to.
And certainly some of the picks that they did make, I know they didn't in certain spots like tackle and tight end, but an interior offensive line, they certainly have the pipeline ready for.
They're stocked.
They're ready to go for if Mike Onwenu walks, if David Andrews retires, like they got guys. So they definitely looked at it in some places, and I think the 6th-round receivers are potentially guys that they look at as 2024 and beyond assets as well to keep around. So are you better on wide receivers? I'm better on wide receivers.
No, I think noticeably better. I think both in the short term and in the long term. I know people are down that they didn't take a receiver high in the draft, but sorry, I just saw the Patriots pop up on NFL Network there.
No.
That's the
old news.
The Tom Brady thing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Very excited.
We can touch on that in a second.
No, you listened to public service announcement 10 times today on the drive-in.
All right.
I think they're better short and long term.
All right. You ready for me to read the 16 offensive linemen the Patriots currently have under contract?
Can I try to do it by memory?
6.
Can I try to do it by memory?
Yeah, I mean, you probably have a different order than me, so this might be hard, but go ahead.
Well, you have the depth chart, right? I'm guessing?
I have my version of it, yeah.
Okay, so at tackle, you have Trent Brown, Riley Reif, Calvin Anderson, Andrew Stuber. Riley Reif, Calvin Anderson, Andrew Stuber. At guard, you have...
You're missing some tackles. But
I know I am. Trent Brown, Riley Reif.
Okay, we don't have time for this.
Okay, just, go ahead.
Trent Brown, Yannick Kajust, James Ferentz, Jason Hines, Bill Murray, Mike Onwenu, Cody Rusey, Cole Strange, Andrew Stuber, Calvin Anderson, Connor McDermott, Riley Reif, David Andrews, Jake Andrews, Sidney Sow, and Antonio Mafi.
I missed Connor McDermott.
16 offensive linemen under contract.
Yeah, but it's really 3 positions. That's only
Adrian
5
Clem,
players per position.
Do you think that they have to go and do their meetings in the auditorium or something like that? Do you think the O-line room is big enough for 16 320-pound human beings to sit in one room?
Well, look, if they do the tackles meeting, that's only 6 players, right? How many linemen did they have last year?
At this point, I don't know about at this point. They only ended up carrying 8 or 9 guys last year on the initial roster.
No, but at one point they had 4 or 5 on the practice squad.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So
it's always a lot.
It's always a lot.
I think what's different about this year in terms of it being a lot is that there's so much uncertainty at tackle that they might just carry the bodies just to have different bodies to throw at it, right? Because there's no real concrete other than I think Trent Brown, who after they didn't draft a tackle early, I think it's safe to say that Trent Brown is now on this team. I understand that there's cap things that they could cut Trent Brown and save some money or trade Trent Brown and save some money. They don't, without drafting a tackle in the top 50, they got it. Trent Brown's the only guy that's played NFL games for a long period of time and done well.
And here's the thing.
Besides, I guess, Riley Reif.
Riley Reif's done for a long time. Yeah. When we were talking about, back in March, right? Oh, if they cut Trent Brown, it's whatever it is, $7 to $10 million. I apologize, Pat's Gap, if I got it wrong. I got it wrong all spring. The idea was they're going to take that $7 to $10 million, and use it in free agency to add a tackle or a corner,
and then draft
whatever.
a tackle in the first round.
Right. Remember sign one, draft one?
Yeah.
Those were the days.
Those are the days.
That
they did draft one, Alex. They drafted City South.
They did. You're right. Yeah. You're right. I should be. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that there's nobody they can sign now, but
yeah,
$7 to $10 million means a lot more in March than it does in May.
Yeah.
Right. So at this point, are you going to be? Can those $7 to $10 million make you a better team with players other than Trent Brown, just based on who's available? Unless they're maybe opening up money for some sort of trade or something, which. What is that even going to be?
We're getting into a rabbit hole here.
How do they do that? So I think Trent Brown's safe at this point.
Okay, so the drill is better, worse, same. I do think it's a little bit confusing with this because there's so many names, and some are tackles, some are guards, some are centers, some are tackles/guards. Some, it's all over the place. But I think the biggest thing that I would say, I'm going to contradict myself because I'm allowed to do that. I think they're better on paper, but I have some real legitimate concerns about this tackle group. Some real concerns that I am fearful, just like last year when right tackle, and at times, let's face it, with Trent Brown, left tackle too, Alex, was a little bit up and down. I am concerned that this is going to be the demise of this offense. Not pass catchers, not the they don't have the number one receiver, like none of that. My biggest concern right now is protection, pass protection mainly. I think they'll figure out how to get it blocked up in the run game, and I think a lot of that assignments is so important when it comes to that. And I think Bill O'Brien and Adrian Clem being here, it will be so much cleaner in terms of mic points and angles and who has who and that sort of thing, that I think their run game is going to be fine. Pass protection and tackle play in pass protection is a big concern of mine. I think a main reason is because I think they're rolling with Riley Reif at right tackle, and I had serious range and foot speed concerns with him based off of his film last year with Chicago, and now we're even a year ahead of that. We look at reportedly the matchup in week 1, which reportedly is the Philadelphia Eagles, and reportedly, and Riley Reif against Hassan Reddick, like that's a mismatch, right? And then the next week he goes up against Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, and then the next week it's gonna could be Von Miller and Greg Rousseau with Buffalo. You know what I mean? Like there's just so many of these talented edge rushers. We know statistically speaking that Mac Jones is, like all quarterbacks, regresses under pressure, but Mac in particular last year had a ton of issues against the blitz and a ton of issues with pressure. Now, with a better coordinated attack and better hots and better blitz pickups and it should be cleaner. We get all that. I'm not like that bullish on this offensive line group. I am coming around on some of the rookies. I think that some of these rookies can play in spots that they have skill sets that fit spots that they need. Antonio Mafi, I think, is a classic. If they don't end up paying Mike Onwenu, like he's going to start at right guard in 2024, and he's going to be a fine player for them. City Sow is exciting. I watched some of his film. Poor UMass. I really learned like the difference between City Sow and the guys they had there. I think he legitimately, really did some damage to
him
guy.
And Demario Douglas. Demario Douglas had a monster game against UMass.
Yeah,
poor UMass.
It probably tells you a lot about that program. But City Sow does have some suddenness, some movement skill, some foot speed. Certainly, I still look at him though, and I still see a guard. I still see a guard ideally, but I guess in theory, they've moved that player to right tackle before. It's Mike Onwenu. It's to a degree Marcus Cannon, right? Marcus Cannon was a little bit taller than Onwenu. Marcus Cannon's a big guy. I didn't realize Cannon's like 6'5", 330.
Yeah.
So he's Onwenu's stouter. He's
Onwenu's like 6'1", 6'2".
Yeah. City Sow's a little bit closer to that with Marcus Cannon. So I think City Sow can play tackle at right tackle. Certainly not a left tackle in this system, but I think you could play right. It's a lot of bodies, and we'll see what ends up happening in camp. And the last one I'll mention, because I was higher on him when they made the 2 free agent signings, and I think Riley Reif has gotten a lot of buzz as kind of the guy because of his experience and his steadiness and his leadership and all that.
Right.
I really like Calvin Anderson as a player, and Calvin Anderson, to me, is the guy that could allow you, if he has a good camp and he looks the part and all that kind of stuff, Calvin Anderson could be the guy that allows you to move Trent Brown right back to the right side. Because Calvin Anderson's an athlete. That's the one thing that he certainly has foundationally. Really, really good athlete. Great explosiveness out of his stance. He's got the range. He's just inconsistent with his technique. If they can coach him up and Adrian Clem can get him to be more consistent, he's a left tackle. So you could play him on the left side, Trent on the right side. That could steady things maybe a little bit more. But better, worse, or same on the offensive line, and it's confusing. There's a lot of names.
Is it weird that I feel better about him? And that doesn't mean I don't have concerns. I very much have concerns. I echo a lot of what you said about the tackle position.
Yeah.
But Isaiah Wynn just didn't have it last year. And
their right tackles were terrible.
Right. And Connor
McDermott
was
saved,
serviceable.
Connor McDermott saved the day.
And he was replacement level.
Yeah.
Right. And, Marcus Cannon, loved him when he was at the Patriots, was a great player. He's not that guy anymore. So they have options. It's almost like the running back thing. Although I said worse at running back, I guess. I don't, but they didn't have the options last year. There was no Damian Harris at the tackle position last year. Just that sturdy veteran that, maybe wasn't great but got you through. I guess that's what Connor McDermott was, but not to the same level.
I think they hope that that's what Riley Reif is.
I think so. They didn't have a guy like Riley Reif. They didn't have a guy like Calvin Anderson last year. After Trent Brown, you were really just going with, you really just kind of hoping. And I'm not saying that
Yadni could just Isaiah Wynn.
I'm not saying that Riley Reif or Calvin Anderson is necessarily going to be great, but if you're going to take a lottery ticket, I think they're better lottery tickets than what they had last year.
Yeah.
So I don't feel great. I don't even know if I feel good.
Yeah.
But I do still feel better than last year, which maybe shows how bad their offensive line was at times last year.
Yeah, it's really it's kind of remarkable that, and they feel good about this tackle room. They've told us right to our faces.
Yeah, Matt Groh said it.
Matt Groh said it, and I think that Belichick said it too when he mentioned that all the offensive additions in free agency, and they didn't really add to the defense in free agency, and that's why you got the defensive picks at the top of the draft instead of offense. But in general, they feel good about this tackle room. I think that they think that they're better on paper there than maybe the outside noise suggests. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt going into the year because maybe they know something that we don't, shocker, and maybe they're seeing it differently, shocker. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But on paper, from the outside looking in, it looks like a group that has a lot of names but doesn't really have a lot of guys that you can fully count on. If you were to configure their starting five right now on the offensive line, I think this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
You know who's starting at center.
Yeah.
You know who's starting at left guard.
Yeah.
And barring something weird happening, you probably know who's starting at right guard too. And when I say something
one
weird,
of the guys who's starting on the right side.
And when I say starting at right guard, barring something weird happening, I mean if Onwenu ends up being some sort of a trade situation, which I don't think is going to happen, you know who's starting at right guard. And I think you know that Trent is starting at one of the tackle spots. That other tackle spot's wide open. It could be. You could tell me right now it would be Riley Reif. That's going to be a tough one.
Get it out. Good
you
job.
could tell me that it was going to be City Sal at this point. You could tell me it would be Mike Onwenu, and they're going to play one of the rookies at guard, right? You could tell me all sorts of different configurations, and I would believe you. And I don't know if that's necessarily a great thing. And this is the one sort of biggest, I'd say maybe even more so than wide receiver that I have with their current roster, is I want an offensive line. I miss the days when we got into camp, Alex, and we just knew who the starting offensive line was.
Right.
Those were the days. That's what you want, because you don't want to talk about your offensive line. If you're talking about your offensive line, more times than not, it's because it's a weakness. You don't usually talk about an offensive line that doesn't give you a lot of reasons to talk about them. So we'll see what ends up happening. Hopefully they're right and we're all wrong about the tackles and ends up being good. These rookies are interesting players, though. I did Jake Andrews and Antonio Maffei. We have profiles up on them now. We talked to some of their coaches. Mike did City Sal. But with Jake Andrews, I think a couple of things just quickly that his coaches told me about him. He's a really, really good high school wrestler.
I love that.
All-American and state champion in Alabama.
Was Copen the one who was the college wrestler?
Well, Stephen Neal.
Stephen Neal, that's one thing. Stephen Neal, yeah, was like the
famously
elite college wrestler.
So he was an all-time, kind of almost like a legend wrestling in Alabama, and was a really good offensive lineman too, all-state, all that kind of stuff in Alabama. So all-state football.
Right.
And he went to Troy, which I get it's not Alabama, it's not Georgia, I get that, but he's got that wrestling, not only from a technique standpoint, that he's got that understands the rules of engagement and leverage and like all that kind of stuff, but he's also just got that like snarl and that grittiness and that toughness. He's a really strong, stout player, and I think that he's definitely going to be somebody that factors in at center in the long term. And I look at Antonio Mafi, basically a carbon copy of Mike Onwenu from a body type standpoint, how he's built, played nose tackle, switched over to guard, now plays guard, really just block of a man. Just massive dude, powerful, strong, a lot like Mike Onwenu. So I can see where they're going with all those picks. So we'll see what ends up happening. Interior, they might have the best interior line depth in the league after taking 3 of them in the draft. Like, nobody's got more guards than the Patriots. So we'll see how that ends up happening. Really quickly before we sign off, Alex, what are your thoughts on Tom Brady coming back for the Patriots home opener? It sounds like it's going to be week 1. Sounds like rumored, not confirmed.
Well, it's going to be the home opener, whatever it is.
Yeah, it sounds like that's going to be in week 1 is what I was getting at.
Okay.
Tom Brady coming back, the prodigal son returning. How do you feel about it?
I mean, you remember when we were doing shows when we first started working together and he left? My whole thing with him leaving was like, I don't necessarily mind watching him in another uniform.
Yeah.
My issue was, you look at Peyton, right, where Peyton Manning's now more part of the Broncos than the Colts, even though he, is the greatest player in Colts history.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to lose Brady in that sense. I want him to be a Patriot for life. And look, we're probably going to have to share him with Tampa to some extent, one way or the other. But coming back for something like this is big. I'm glad he's doing it. I'm really glad he's doing it. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a really fun day. Hopefully they play up to it.
Yeah.
The other question here is like, do they wear the throwback uniforms? And then because they normally give the guy the jersey, right? But they'll give him the current jersey.
Yeah.
They won't give him the one with like the silver shoulders, right? The Dynasty era. Do we get to see him in the Pat Patriot throwback one last time? That could be cool. So, no, I'm super excited for it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I'm glad he's doing it. I'm glad the team's doing it.
Yeah.
Robert Kraft seemed super excited about it on NFL Network this morning, which, I mean, of course he is, but, like, it was kind of cool to see that. Like, it felt like a high school reunion. So, looking forward to it.
Better than a high school reunion.
You know what I mean? But that, like,
I think a couple of things on
when
it.
you see these people hanging out together that you haven't seen hung out together in years, and it's like, oh, yeah, no, we used to have all these great times together. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's kind of like I imagine how my parents feel when my high school friends like come back around, like, if we're like all home for Thanksgiving or something like that, and like in my my high school friends that like grew up in my house as kids and stuff like that, my parents get all excited when those people are around. Really quickly, with Brady, I think it's 2 things for me. One, it's great that we are opening the door to him being a part of the Patriots again with this.
Yes.
It's not going to be the only thing. It's certainly, I don't even think it's going to be the biggest thing. I think that there's going to be bigger, monumental type of moments or ceremonies. Patriots Hall of Fame.
I think even Kraft said kind of that, right?
Yeah, jersey retirement. This is.
You don't think they'll retire his jersey when he's here? I was kind of hoping that they would.
I don't know anything. So
okay.
I just want to put that out there because I think sometimes people think that, we know things around here about this type of stuff. I don't know anything about that. I don't think so. I think that this is, remember after the COVID year, they brought Julian Edelman back and they just gave him a moment at halftime and allowed the crowd. That's what this is, I think, in theory. So jersey retirement, I wouldn't rule out them announcing that they are retiring his jersey because that's a given. That's an easy one.
Right.
So I wouldn't rule that out, but I think that ideally they have separate occasions for all of these things. This is just kind of a way to bring him back and reintroduce him back into the Patriots organization and also just to, quite frankly, show him off, right, to the fans a little bit and get fans fired up. Then I think there's going to be jersey retirement. And then they'll be Patriots Hall of Fame. Now, there could be a situation where the Patriots Hall of Fame voting and all, it might not go through the typical hoops for the Patriots Hall of Fame.
I feel like they got to put him in, like, specially.
For two reasons. One, it's silly to put Tom Brady up against, like, poor Logan Makins and Bill Parcells in a fan vote, because it's just going to be 100. Like,
oh my God, the takes from you if it's Brady against Parcells.
It'll just be like, it'll be 99% Brady because some trolls will vote for somebody else just to throw off the numbers. But obviously, he's going to win in a absolute landslide in a fan vote. So it's kind of unfair, almost in a way, to put two guys up against him in a fan vote like they traditionally do. And then secondly, he does deserve it, of course, to be, just put right in and not gone through the whole voting process. So I think that's in play. I think that there will be some sort of statue road named after, like something like that, right? That's around the stadium. That's sort of a showing, love to Brady in some sort of way. So there'll be a bunch of different check marks here. I think there's going to be a lot of different benchmarks here of what they're going to do with him. So that's great. But this is, to me, is really just like the first step of hopefully many steps to honor Tom Brady from this point on. So that'll be fun. Let's just really quickly, let's do better or worse, the same rapid fire here, just so that everybody that just listened to us talk about 1,700 different names for an hour and a half knows where we're at. So quarterbacks, are we better?
I said very, very slightly worse if I have to pick
worse.
one.
I think I said same.
Okay. I didn't know same was an option.
Yeah, better, worse, same.
All right, just keep going.
Running backs, I said better. You said
worse with potential to be better.
Can you not walk the fence one time? You said worse.
You picked same. That's the most walking the fence.
Yeah, at least I admit it out loud.
All right, worse.
Wide receiver were both better.
Noticeably better.
Tight ends were both better.
Better.
Offensive line were both better.
Better, yeah.
They got better in some places.
Yeah.
They did get better.
Yeah.
We'll see how much it matters in a couple months. But we'll be back next week, and we'll talk about the schedule in its full capacity once we have it tonight. So next week we'll do a schedule recap and go over some of the usual things, the meat of the schedule and the bye week and Christmas and all that type of stuff. And then we'll also do a better, worse, same for the defense, which I think is a little bit easier, quite frankly, than the offense. There's a lot of names. Defensively, I think it's a little bit easier. So we'll do that next week as well. But until then, signing off for Alex Barth, I'm Evan Lazar. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody, and we'll see you guys next Thursday.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.